Hello all my Kinvians and welcome to a new catching up vlog with Once Upon a Time. Today I'm going to be watching Desperate Souls. And, well, I was going to just kind of... Well, I actually don't remember if I saw the preview of it in the previous video. It's been a few days. But this episode covers Mr. Gold, or more specifically Rumpelstiltskin, in his past. So... yeah, when the previous episode that focused on Rumpelstiltskin in the past, I thought that's what this is, but I got it backwards, obviously. So, let's begin Desperate Souls and see how much I've forgotten. Men on a horse with a torch? Magical powers!
The Dark One seems to think I can.
Bang. And obviously that's who it was with the torch, the Dark One. Desperate Souls! One knows how to identify a desperate soul if you are the Dark One. Or in this case, if you're Mr. Gold. I love this episode. I truly, truly do. Before I get into my real thoughts about it, one thing I do want to say. The son... actually, hold on a second. I want to see if his full name comes up. Mr. Clark... Nope, they didn't show the full name of the kid. Okay, that's fine. He's called Bay by his father, and I'm pretty sure, when this come out? 2011? Yeah, calling someone Bay wasn't a thing at the time. But every time, Rumpelstiltskin refers to his son as Bay, that's what comes to mind for me. It's just like, Bay. It's just so ridiculous to me. And I can't help but wonder if they had done the show a bit farther in the future, when like that did become a saying, if they would have still used the name Bay. Legitimately curious about that. But to get into the episode itself, the Dark One, aka basically Rumpelstiltskin through 99% of the show that I've seen. I really think this is a cool origin story for the evil Rumpelstiltskin, and I do have to say, just the man is a phenomenal actor. It's throughout the course of this episode. I mean, in most episodes, he does a great job of the two characters, Mr. Gold and Rumpelstiltskin. Which, I mean, they have some very sinister similarities, but in personality overall, they're very different. And then in this episode, you add in Rumpelstiltskin as he was. A coward. A sniveling, weak, crippled coward. That is his defining feature, really. And it's just, all three are played so amazingly, and it makes that turn to the Dark One just phenomenal. It's an amazing payoff, even if it is rather terrifying. Or, well, I get from the perspective of the son, it's rather terrifying. I guess just from my perspective, it's kind of cool. But yeah, the Dark One and Rumpelstiltskin, Mr. Gold in this episode in general, just amazing. Makes this entire episode of what is already a pretty dang solid episode. Now, one of the best, absolute best lines from this entire episode came from near the beginning, when Emma came to Mr. Gold's shop. It's like she knocks, she goes in, it's like, Mr. Gold, are you here? And he says, well, it is my shop. I don't know what. I think it's a combination of just the phrase, the snarkiness, and just the way he says it. It's just so well done. I absolutely love that line. And then there's something about Mr. Gold slash Rumpelstiltskin that I can't help but feel, and that is, yes, he's evil. Yes, he's conniving. But is there still kindness in his heart? Or perhaps in being in the world without magic and having to rely on just his human instincts once more, has he developed a, not necessarily love, but just a soft spot, the ability to really care about people? And the reason I bring that up is in the beginning when he's talking to Emma about Graham's things, the people she would be disappointing if she left, who she might be disappointing, such as Henry, and talking about how they go away, or they grow up so fast, paraphrasing there. I mean, reflecting on his son, and also, again, referring to Henry. And maybe that's just, maybe it's not so much that he's regained some humanity, but he still has like this sliver of humanity about him. This little bit that does care, despite being, well, evil. So yeah, and I'm sure this is a lot of things that I'll learn more about him as the show goes along, but it's just so much about Mr. Gold and Rumpelstiltskin I want to know more about. And from what I hear, they expand on him quite a bit throughout the course of the show. But the next thing that really jumped out to me is the fact that Henry is scared. Now, as Emma points out, it's like, he is depressed. It's like, what all's been going on, the fact that his adopted mother and his birth mother are fighting. And, I mean, he's scared. He's scared for Emma. He's scared that if Emma keeps changing things, because she has been changing things, that it might result in her death, and he's scared to lose her. So it's really well done. This is another case where the kid who plays Henry, his acting is still improving. He does a really good job of, I mean, maybe it's kind of silly to say, but reflecting or portraying those complex emotions mostly non-verbally, because a lot of the time, especially early in the episode, he doesn't say anything. He's just very standoffish. But he's able to emote in the few things he says, and when he's with Emma, just does a great job of portraying that fear. It's like that fear of losing someone he loves. So yeah, really, really good job there. And another great quote from this episode, and it's one that's revisited several times throughout, but good has to play fair, evil doesn't. And man, that takes so many forms throughout this episode. Because what Emma did throughout the episode, including standing up to Mr. Gold, was good. It was the right thing to do. At the same time, Mr. Gold is evil. Right along there with Regina. And he doesn't have to play fair, because even though good won in this situation, he's still getting what he wants. He's still getting what he wants. He got what he wanted. He wanted Emma to win. He wanted Regina to lose just a little bit more power in the town. Because in the end, I just a theory, I feel like the ultimate struggle is going to sort of come down between Gold and Regina. Whether it's before or after they get their memories back, whenever that happens. Like, Emma's going to be the savior. Emma is the savior. But there's going to be the power struggle between Regina and Gold is going to just boil over. It's going to come to a boiling point and overflow into the rest of the town. I can't help but feel like that's going to be the case. But yeah, it's like, good has to play fair, evil doesn't. And perhaps that means that evil will be playing unfair against each other. If that makes any sense at all. But, moving on from there, already talked about Rumpelstiltskin, but the theme of there being a benefactor. Mr. Gold was Emma's benefactor. And the beggar was Rumpelstiltskin's benefactor. And also ended up being the Dark One, apparently. And that, I actually didn't write this down, but the dagger that belonged to Zozo, and then after Rumpelstiltskin killed him, it had his name on the dagger. One, is that dagger still around? Like, yes, it's the world without magic, but is that dagger still around? And is it in Mr. Gold's shop? Perhaps in a safe somewhere. If someone had that dagger, would they still be able to have control over him? Maybe not. Again, because the world is without magic. It's like people are able to regain their memories so far. Any existence of actual magic hasn't really appeared at all in our world so far. So, I can't help but wonder, if that dagger is still around, if it still exists, would it allow the bearer to control Mr. Gold / Rumpelstiltskin? Pretty interesting thought, in my opinion, at least. And it may be something that's visited upon in the next 7 seasons. You all know better than I do. But, let's see, coming up next, The Truth of Henry's Birth, which is also something that I think gets a bit more expanded on, like Emma kind of confides in Henry, or he's interested to know more about what happened there. And it's something that's very interesting, and they're very intrigued to learn more about it. I don't think they go in depth on it in the next episode, so I'm guessing or kind of hoping that after episode 9 that they do expand on the past there, Emma's past, and what happened that resulted in her giving birth in a jail. But after that, there's the whole theme of the fires, the parallels between the fire that Rumpelstiltskin set in the castle and the fire that Mr. Gold either set or had set in Town Hall. And, the parallels there are obvious, and I think I brought this up back when I did the Discovering video originally. Why, for something that's so important to the Duke, for something that allows him to control the Dark One, why was it unguarded? And it's clearly unguarded because, yes, Bay and Rumpelstiltskin set fire to the area, but there's no one that runs out. There was no one in that area where the fire is. It's empty. It's like basically the only thing that seemingly could have actually stopped Rumpelstiltskin would have been the fire itself. I don't know, maybe it's intended to be like, there was people in there, but then the fire was set and they all ran out, we just didn't see it. but I don't know, it's just it's a weak moment in an overall strong episode just because it feels poorly done, in my opinion. Like, at least show a few guards running out and trying to escape the fire. It would have made a little bit more sense to me. But regardless, that's all I had to say about that. And I actually missed this entirely, but the whole thing of Emma and Mr. Gold, before she betrayed him, those two versus Regina and Sydney, I can't help but feel like that might be something that occurs more in the future. Particularly because Emma still owes Gold a favor. But, yeah, I just really feel like that's going to be a continuing theme. That Regina has control of Sydney Glass, and he's kind of just one to not be trusted. I feel like is probably the best way to put it. He's one to not be trusted, and I'm interested to see what happens with him as the show goes along. But also, again, to see how Emma and Gold, how they continue to intermingle as at the very least, this first season goes on. And it was very brief and kind of adorable, but Mary Margaret and David, their quick little moment out on the signposts, and it got so awkward so quickly. And it's clear Mary Margaret still likes him. It's like she's pissed, obviously, over what's happened, and the fact that he led her on, but there's still definitely something there. And I want to see more. It's like, if we're just going to be getting these itty bitty tiny little snippets of story with them as it goes along, it's like it's everything in me to not just marathon through the entire season. Recordings be damned. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because just their plot, their little storyline, I really want to see how it concludes. I want to see before their memories come back, because I assume they do. I assume the memories come back. I don't know for sure, but I want to see what happens to them before that time. I want to see what happens to these two characters. Their world without magic alter egos. And obviously Emma won with Mr. Gold's plan all along in order to make sure that she was a true symbol. She stood up to him, and everyone is scared of Regina, but they truly are afraid of him. And I feel like this is one of the biggest theories I have for this show, and I don't think it's one that I had when watching Discovering, or when I did the Discovering Once Upon a Time videos originally. But the beggar / the original, or the old Dark One, can tell a desperate soul, or can identify a desperate soul. Mr. Gold knows a desperate soul when he sees one. So, at some point, it probably won't be this season, I feel like, because there's a definite storyline going on here, and it may conclude with them getting their memories back. I'm not sure. But what if Emma becomes the Dark One? It may be by accident, but could it be that part of Gold's plan is to rid himself of that burden, just as the old one did, or the beggar old one? It's a theory I'm going to have to write down. Because it's something that if there's one thing I've learned about this show, there are no coincidences, or at least very few, depending on if they forget about a plot hole or not. But I feel like Gold saying that is more than just its appropriateness for this episode. I feel like it's going to mean more, especially considering what the beggar old one, or Dark One, had him do. So yeah, my theory is at some point, Emma might take on the powers of the Dark One. And that would be really weird and interesting. But that's all I have to say about this episode. Desperate Souls, an amazing episode that comes after other great episodes. And coming up next, let's pull up the episode list here. We have True North. And I think I actually remember what episode this is. I just vaguely remember the last one I saw for Discovering, and I think it has to do with Hansel and Gretel? That sounds right. I could be wrong, but that sounds about right. We'll have to wait and see. But thank you all for being here for this episode of Catch-Up Vlogs with Once Upon a Time, or with me doing Once Upon a Time. Which I feel like they're almost kind of taking over the format of my old Discovering series in a way. Who knows? There might just be this big convergence and they become one in a way. We'll have to wait and see what the future holds. But everyone, please let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments down below. I'm really intrigued to hear what you thought about it. And if you've seen the original Discovering Once Upon a Time episode that I did for this one, let me know your thoughts and perhaps point out any differences that you might notice as to how I responded to it then versus now. And also, if you haven't seen that episode, it will be up here in the corner in the last 20 seconds of the video, or there's a link to it in the description down below. So, there you go. Yeah. And I'm going to end it here and get ready to watch True North. And then from there, the catch-up vlogs will be complete. And it will be time to move on to Discovering Once Upon a Time once more. So, Melina, if you're watching this, time's coming. Prepare yourself. Alright, until next time everyone, I am Papa Ken. See you in the next video.